the first question I usually ask is, have they done anything even remotely like this before? And most often the answer is no. And it's just from those first few initial questions and the look in their eyes. And I'm not going to brag about this, but I can usually look into a new person's eyes and tell you whether they're going to come back. There's usually like a deer in the headlights look. And I'm like, this could go either way. And then there's usually like, they've tuned out. They've decided right away, this is weird. I don't want to do this. And I'll talk to them and they're not listening. The answers they're giving me back are not thoughtful answers. Their mind is already back out the door. They're already gone mentally. They're just waiting for me to shut up so they can get up and leave. And then there's the people who are like wanting me to shut up so that I can go out and roll. So I can tell that too. I can tell that like energy.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Forever White Belt with your host, Adolfo Foronda. In today's episode, we have the privilege of diving into the captivating world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu alongside a fantastic guest, Aaron Esdon. Aaron, a black belt under Matt McPeake, has not only left his mark as a gold medalist and accomplished practitioner, but has also embraced the role of head Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor at Platinum Training Facility. During our conversation, we will explore Aaron's inspiring journey with BJJ Globetrotters and how this unique affiliation has shaped his approach to the gentle art. As a relatively new black belt, Aaron has gained valuable insight into the nuances of teaching and mentoring students at different skill levels. We'll uncover great ideas behind his teaching style, emphasizing the importance of knowing each student individually and tailoring instruction to their specific needs. Beyond his prowess on the mats, Aaron's extensive experience in law enforcement has granted him a distinct perspective on self-defense, conflict resolution, and the de-escalation of unpredictable situations. We'll delve into how his background has influenced his teaching of self-defense techniques within the realm of BJJ, highlighting the importance of self-confidence and avoiding potential conflicts. From his training experiences with world champions to his achievements as a competitor, Aaron's journey is brimming with valuable lessons and inspiring anecdotes that will captivate both novice and seasoned practitioners alike. And with that, I give you Aaron Esdon. Aaron, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Adolfo. Thank you for having me.
The first time I've been to the only time I've been to a Globetrotters campus in Arizona, one of my favorite coaches to see was this gentleman named Matt McPeake. What he was instructing at the time, something called the Powerline, very, very interesting. But the way I noticed that he applied this stuff to Izuke was very interesting. I mean, the guy was no holds barred, and I'm like, who is this poor bastard just taking the abuse and whatever below? You know, so I follow Matt on social quite a bit, but it was interesting because then I discovered you. Oh, there's this guy, Aaron, who is not only Matt's uke, of course, but like one of his students and also a very proficient teacher as well. And not only that, you're a head instructor. I mean, is this all correct?
It is, yeah. I often get people come up to me, especially at camps, asking me like, why would I ever volunteer to be an uke for Matt? And I'm like, I don't volunteer, actually. Yeah. I'm told that I'm doing this. I happily do it, but it's something that I'm expected to do, and it's actually kind of a pleasure to be able to withstand that for as long as I do. Matt is very ardent in his opinion that he wants things to look and feel real. He doesn't want there to be any confusion about how the technique or the concept is like applied. He doesn't want to give the students the wrong impression, where if they don't do everything exactly how he shows it, they're not going to get the same results. So to kind of make sure that he conveys that, he has to do everything almost like 100%. As much as I might like him to not apply a triangle at 100, if he doesn't do that, and anyone in the room is actually paying attention, they might get the impression they could apply that, not get the tap, and wonder, okay, what's wrong with what I'm doing, or what's wrong with what this instructor just showed me?
Yeah, no, I greatly appreciate that. I remember even seeing him in Europe somewhere, and he's doing working on something called the backpack, and with the Powerline. And I'll add some images and video and stuff, you guys. And he like is with I think a random student or something in Europe, and he's applying like this thing across the jaw on this poor kid and just just giving it to him. And, it looks rough, but I'm like, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you have to properly do it. And that's the response you get.
It's funny because when you're doing these things, especially as a student, you have probably people in the room who've been training for a few months, if like a few years. You never want them to have that lost feeling. Like they get shown something, well, the instructor did it this way, but my partner here, they're not reacting the same way at all. Having that feedback immediately from your training partner, it's beneficial, right? Like it like immediately, okay, I'm on the right spot here. The blade of my hand is grinding on the jaw just the way that Matt showed. I'm getting the person to kind of like jolt a little bit. Those are the types of things that really help a student, I think.
So one of the things you articulate is the importance of really showing a realistic sort of scenario in terms of technique instruction. This was sort of disseminated down from Matt. Now, what are some other sort of valuable lessons or principles you've learned from Matt and that have had like a significant impact on, your jiu-jitsu?
Well, like it goes back to probably how I met him. I actually met Matt during COVID. I had an instructor that I'd been with for years, and he was late 50s, early 60s, and he, for whatever reason, whether it was through his own personal opinions or what he had been kind of getting from the media, he became very fearful of being outside, interacting with people. And he didn't actually start training again on the mats until, I want to say, October 2021. So it was a good year and a half where I didn't have a dedicated instructor. If I had waited, unfortunately, I lasted about 12 weeks in those initial stages of COVID where everything was locked down. And I had a friend of mine who said, oh, you got to come meet my friend Matt. And I was like, okay, whatever. Your friend Matt, like trust me, just come meet him. You're gonna like him. It took him about 3 or 4 times for me to actually agree. And I took the hour drive, went down and visited Matt. And it was just his philosophy on training. This whole thing about personal responsibility, that there's nobody that's going to pick you up and carry you and bring you through the door, set you down on the mats and order you around. It's the discipline that you need inside yourself. You're going to be the one that's going to go train. You're going to be the one that's going to be making sure that training is purposeful, and you're the one that's going to make sure that when you leave the gym that day, you're not just going to leave whatever you've done on the mats. You're going to bring it with you. You're going to dissect it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you're going to take that with you into your next training session. And that whole kind of concept of personal responsibility, we both had the same kind of feeling where it's only on you. There's nobody else in your corner that's going to push you. You have to be the one that pushes yourself.
That's fascinating because I remember someone asked me, and sometimes people ask me, what's some of the most important advice you give to a white belt? And that's one of them I always say is take ownership of your training. Everyone thinks that the instructor is going to be the end all be all for your entire journey, but so much is on you, the student.
Yes, for sure. Like I have students of mine, and it's always those initial kind of questions they'll prod you with, like, can I cross-train at another gym? I saw this guy's instructional on BJJ Fanatics, and they're almost like testing you, like, are you okay with me learning somewhere else? And I'm like, absolutely. I could never hope to be that one person for anybody. You need those types of things in your life. And if you're going to be the type of person that's going to, on your own, voluntarily go out and do them, more power to you. Like, I love that. And you can, in turn, bring those additional little nuggets of information back to the gym and share them amongst the rest of the students.
What belt color were you when you met Matt then?
I was a purple belt, actually. And I was in the midst of considering opening my own gym in the middle of COVID, which looking back was probably stupid. It did turn out, but in the initial phases, it was a huge risk. And one of the reasons why I stuck with Matt was because he was so supportive. He had been there before. He had been kind of like in a leadership role at his original gym. He had been instructing classes for years as a colored belt. And I think he knew the kind of pressure that would be put on me, especially from like an outsider point of view, like, oh, you're not a black belt and you're going to be leading instruction at a gym. And I knew that if I had someone like him guiding me, that it would make things a lot easier. So yeah, I was a purple belt when I started training with him.
You mentioned, in retrospect, you think it was kind of silly, it seems like, is what I'm getting from you, from considering opening an academy at purple belt. Now, can you tell me why? Is that like because of how archaic or how locked down Canada was? I know it was particularly bad there in terms of how strict it was, or was it just that you were a purple belt?
It was kind of both, actually. So Canada, you're right. We had a bit of like a nanny state here. Things didn't open up, I want to say, to somewhat normal levels until, I want to say, July of 2021. So we had a good year and 3 months where you couldn't, like, nothing was normal. There was definitely no going to like a gym and like exercising. So we had the windows covered, no advertising. We were lucky to have 3 or 4 people showing up to classes. But on top of that, the city that I teach and train in, London, Ontario, is kind of a unique city. It has about 7 or 8 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu clubs, which I think is a little high for the population. It's only about 300,000-400,000 people. And one of the gyms, it's kind of like it became like the nexus of all the other gyms in town to kind of proliferate and grow. So there's a lot of competition here. And at the time, I was the only club that was being led by a non-black belt. So I was in my own mind, at a severe disadvantage from a purely marketing perception point of view. And I kind of tried to block that out. I had enough people who had kind of told me, like, no, Aaron, doesn't matter what your belt rank is. For whatever reason, the way you communicate this stuff to me, it just makes sense. And your classes are great. They're fun. Don't worry about what your belt rank is. Nobody cares. So I just tried to put that in my mind when I decided to finally do this, and blindly put my head down and just keep training and teaching and learning and growing as much as I possibly could.
You mentioned London, Ontario, and the academy it looks like you're at is right now where you're the head coach at is Platinum Martial Arts.
Yeah, so the original gym was Platinum Martial Arts. They only strictly did Muay Thai and boxing. And it's like a really well-known Muay Thai boxing gym. And before COVID, I simply sent them an email as a silly purple belt saying, hey, I see you got open space on your schedule. You got mats there. I could totally just teach a couple classes for you, and didn't hear anything back from them. And then as soon as COVID hit, I figured, well, that's the end of that. And I don't know if it's the mentality of the ownership here, but by the time the fall of 2020 rolled around, they were ready, willing, and able to kind of start implementing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program into the club.
One thing people got to see about the academy, you can't see it if you're just listening, folks, but there's this amazing graffiti like on the training wall. Now, I've only seen it in your videos, and right now, if you're watching on YouTube or wherever, Spotify, behind Aaron, it's really cool graffiti. Is that throughout, or is that right there? And where did that come from?
It's actually the main wall of the gym, and it kind of came about from my head. I wanted to give something back to all the people that had supported me up until this point. When we first opened, we were in a different location, kind of a drab, gray, monotone, just like I see in like a lot of other gyms, a lot of gray and black. And I wanted there to be something that as soon as you walked in the doors, it let you know the kind of vibe that we were going to have here. And I'm not promising you that we're going to all win gold medals at the local tournament and that we're all going to like become killers. I'm going to promise you that we're going to have fun. It's going to be a welcoming environment. It's going to be open, something that Christian has really preached at the Globetrotters camps, that everyone is welcome. No matter who you are, what your background is, there's going to be a friendly face greeting you at the door. And the mural behind me is just kind of like a visual representation of that. So before we opened, I hired a local artist here in town. He spent a couple days with just literally a paintbrush and some paint cans, and by hand painted that giant mural. It's a graffiti of our name, Platinum BJJ, and the main artistic focus of the mural is a giant turtle, which the nexus of my kind of connecting with Matt in like a training environment was his kind of communication of Preet Mikkelson's systems, like the turtle, the running man, all of those things. So the turtle here is actually kind of a visual representation of Preet, and if you kind of see it riding on the back of him is a pigeon representing Matt. So one of the first lessons that Matt tried to kind of show me was a guard posture when you're stuck in someone's closed guard, how you kind of assume a yoga pose similar to that of the pigeon pose, and using that to kind of break down the person's guard. So I thought it was great, and I hid Jay Page's logo in the turtle shell because Jay was the actual person who awarded Matt his black belt at the main camp in 2018. I know it was like a kind of a council thing, but I think Jay kind of took Matt under his wings, kind of officially kind of guiding him after that. Since then, I've kind of also followed that same pathway. Like a kind of surreal moment at the last Globetrotters camp at Jay Page's Academy. But when you come in, that giant turtle with the pigeon riding on his back is kind of what you first see.
So a lot to break down there. One of which is Aaron mentioned Christian, just for clarification, that's Christian Graugart, the founder of Globetrotters, BJJ Globetrotters. And then also Jay Pages is a black belt under Kaio Terra. And Aaron, congratulations on your black belt. I know you've had it for a bit now, but I know it's recent-ish, right?
It was last November, so the camp that was hosted in Arizona, November 2022.
Can you explain that moment?
No, probably because when it started to happen, the whole room started to tilt, and I quickly realized I'm going to pass out. I was like, I'm going to pass out, right? I can't pass out. There's like 200 people in this room, 250 people in this room. And I had to literally kind of like pick myself up off the mat, and I like a zombie walked over, and I basically collapsed onto Matt because I had to hug him because I was going to pass out. I didn't expect that at all. I didn't. It was a complete shock to me. It was an honor to have so many great people in that room, all the black belts voting, telling me that I was ready to wear a black belt around my waist.
Oh, wow. So this was a council decision. It wasn't just Matt's. Okay.
No. So Matt put my name forth. I wondered because at the beginning of camp, everyone has these goals when they go to camps. Some people like to attend all the classes. Some people, they like to see how many rolls they can get at open mat. And for all the camps I had been to, my kind of mini goal that nobody knew about was I wanted to see how many black belts I could roll with. I didn't care about how I did. I wanted to experience black belts from all over the world, all different styles. And for whatever reason at this particular camp, right from the first day, I'm like, I'm rolling with a lot of black belts. Like they are all coming up to me asking me to roll. I'm like, this is great. Like I'm going to break my record. Not realizing why, just so that they could get like a feel for me. And they were all kind of mini testing me during those rolls.
You know, for the layman, can you explain what the council even is and what that's all about?
Yeah, sure. So from my point of view, the council is simply a group of black belts, Christian being kind of the head of that. And they represent an opportunity for people to be graded or be evaluated where these people don't generally have a head instructor or a home academy or somewhere where they could receive some sort of objective way of evaluating their progress. And there's quite a few people, whether it's they had to move for work-related purposes, their academy shut down, their instructor just quit or decided they weren't going to do it anymore. I guess there's a lot of people who are left kind of orphaned. And I guess at each of these camps, anyone is free to walk up to a black belt and say, I would like to be considered for grading. And then every black belt at camp has the opportunity, if they so choose, to be involved and evaluate them. Whether it's through roles, conversation, any interaction they have with the person, they then have some sort of connection with them. It's kind of the best way of doing it if you ask me. I know it might be controversial for me to say that. Quite often people are given belts for reasons other than their prowess or their effectiveness in performing the martial art, whether it be financial reasons, so like connections to the coach, like you have a coach's favorite. I could name any number of other kind of weird culty political reasons that kind of have popped up in my journey. To have a person or a group of people who don't have that connection to you simply evaluate your jiu-jitsu on the mats and you as a human being and go, yes, this person has demonstrated that they are of that level and they're of the type of person that I don't have a problem with wearing that belt and telling everyone where they got it from.
Was that by your choice, or is that, I would assume if you're not a student automatically under Matt or under Matt McPeake, that you fall into that, because I don't think everyone's going to fly to a Globetrotters to get evaluated, right?
No. So I think there's still a few people who are students of Globetrotters instructors, and their instructor sometimes would use camp as an opportunity to evaluate their students. So by the simple fact that maybe a student has that level of passion that they're willing to travel, sacrifice time, money, resources to have that opportunity, it goes a long way to show how passionate they are about the sport and how much it means to them and what they're going to do beyond just getting that grading, whether it be a colored belt or a black belt. I think one of the last things you want to ever see, and it happens a lot at blue belt, is you tie a belt around someone's waist and then you never see them again. You're doing that to recognize their progress up until that point, hoping that they carry on and they grow even further and they somewhat follow in your footsteps. So when I met Matt, I had actually realized after meeting him that I had heard about him years prior without even knowing him. And he was this mysterious brown belt in the province who had had the audacity to receive his black belt from strangers. And everyone in the gym at the time who was talking about this, like, can you believe that? And in my head, I'm thinking, that sounds so cool. Like, I would love to have my jiu-jitsu be so badass that just strangers agree and just say, yep, this person is a black belt. And it's not because I'm buddies with the coach or I won a lot of gold medals at a local tournament. It was simply based on the objective, no nonsense evaluation of people who they have no reason to lie. Like, they can just feel you on the mats, they can talk to you afterwards, they can have a chat. This person's ready. Like, this person's ready to carry that weight. I consider kind of a weight like around your waist day to day. And yeah, like, I just thought that was so cool.
Just a reminder to please give us a 5-star review on Apple Music and Spotify and become a VIP member for only 99 cents a month. Get ad-free episodes at anchor.fm/foreverwhitebelt/subscribe and check us out on Instagram at Forever White Belt Show. Go buy your Forever White Belt swag at teespring.com/forever-white-belt. Check us out on YouTube now at Forever White Belt. Finally, if you ever get to beautiful Northern California, please come roll with us at North Bay Jiu Jitsu in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. They're amazing instructors and everyone there are great people. Mention the podcast and get 2 weeks free. I'm curious, what has been interesting you as of late in terms of jiu-jitsu?
Oh man, almost the non-jiu-jitsu parts of it. It sounds really weird to say. Like, you start this journey and you get told about all these positions like guard and mount and back, and it's like, once you start doing it, you realize you're simply just playing a game, and the game has all these rules, and everyone kind of has a social contract where we silently agree on all these rules, like, I will play guard and you will pass my guard. And then once you pass my guard, you'll get into side control and I will try to get my guard. And then I've come to recently realize how much more fun it is to just kind of hack and break all those rules. You don't have to stay in guard. You just stand up. I tell all my students, if you ever have any dilemma in your roles, just add standing up to it. You'll immediately feel a little bit freer, you'll feel a little bit lighter, and you won't have quite as much pressure on you. If that person's passing your guard and you can't stop them, just let it go and just stand up. And I'm not going to promise you the result after that's going to be great, but you'll find that if you give yourself more than one option and maybe focus more on your wrestling, take them back down, maybe now you're the one passing their guard.
How is Canadian wrestling?
Canadians aren't really well known for their wrestling. We do have quite a few local collegiate kind of university level wrestlers. We have some that visit our club and they show what they can. I think it's kind of a good balance because our gym is literally coming up on 3 years old and we don't have a lot of experienced people. So it's almost a perfect marriage between kind of like a university collegiate level wrestling and a lot of beginners who probably aren't going to get that much better than they're going to get in like a club like this. We're not going to go to the Worlds, we're not going to ADCC, but if you can teach a local group of guys who are in their late teens, early 20s how to effectively take down their opponent, they're going to love that. So it leaves it to be a little more fun, I find. And we've kind of incorporated it into how we do our training here. It's not simply just jiu-jitsu sparring and like rolling. We've incorporated the more wrestling type rules in terms of our roles. So takedowns are more important, pinning someone to the mat's more important, holding them there is more important. I know you had Chris Paynes on recently, and just something as simple as how he explained how not letting people between your hip and your armpit, that concept has been around forever. If you instead focus not just on that, but on pinning and holding your opponent down, that simple fact, you'll find jiu-jitsu becomes a lot easier. If you stop worrying about, can I get the hooks in? Can I get full mount? Can I get those mount points? It's like, no, can you hold your opponent down? Like, can you literally keep them pinned to the mat? That has kind of turned everyone's mind and changed it a little bit, and it's made it a little more fun.
Well, I think that was like the beauty of watching Khabib in the UFC. Like everyone was like, "Oh my God! Well, there's this thing called control," and it's really, it sounds stupid. Just like when I was talking to Chris, saying not letting people between your armpits and your knees, or even your armpits and your elbows. Wow, that does something. But even controlling people, and it's something we don't mention a lot. It seems like it's not really emphasized. Maybe now it's sort of getting in the zeitgeist a bit more.
Because it's hard, right? To be able to not only ground someone, but then hold them there. That is really hard. And to watch my white belts do that, struggle, and then get better at it, it's so satisfying. Because you can tell, like, there's no tangible feeling there. Like, I held down my partner for 3 seconds today. You can't go home and brag to your wife about that. She's not going to care. But like, you inside, you're like, I did that. Like, he was standing, then he wasn't, and he could not get up. And there's something to be said about that satisfying feeling, being able to like do that, accomplish that. And sure, it doesn't speak to like the whole self-defense nature of the martial art, but it is empowering. And I think ever since COVID and the pandemic's kind of fading into our background, I see more and more people coming through my doors, and that seems to be a common theme, feeling empowered and feeling like I want to accomplish something. I want to feel like I'm useful and feel like I can defend myself. And if things go wrong, it's not just me laying on my back hoping for the best.
We kind of touched on it here, but I'm curious what you think are some common misconceptions or myths about jiu-jitsu that you frequently encounter or think about, and how do you debunk them?
There's probably 2 different categories that I always seem to address. One is the more traditional martial arts aspects that some gyms still do ascribe to. Like, there's still photos on some walls at gyms, you're still bowing, there's still weird culty, don't look at me when I'm tying my belt, or you're not allowed to ask me to roll. Those types of things I often have to kind of casually sit down and explain to beginners, like, nope, like, there's no pictures on my wall here, you don't gotta bow. I literally have one rule while you're on the mats, nobody gets hurt, and one rule off the mats, no bare feet. That's it. Everything else is pretty much common sense. And it goes back to what I said about Matt. It's personal responsibility and basically common sense. You take care of yourself, look after everyone else, and we should all be fine. The other one is like, people come in here and they have a conception that it's like aggressive, I guess. There's a bit of like a fear, and I had the same fear when I was walking into a martial arts club, where there's a bit of a vibe when you walk in. It's definitely a male-dominated environment. Testosterone's kind of thick every now and then, and it is a constant battle for me to balance meeting the needs of those clients that do come in and they do want to get that workout, they want to have those hard rolls, they want to be bigger, stronger, faster, and then still having it be welcoming to those who might be intimidated by that.
So I'm wondering, how do you deal with those factors in terms of like people that may be a bit older, people that are on the smaller side, injury-prone individuals, weaker, stronger? Those are difficult plates to spin.
It is, especially when you're trying to grow a business, right? You're always trying to balance, okay, I want to attract as many bodies as I can, but I don't want to alienate anybody. Like, I don't care who you are. We have students here, they're late teens, very slight build. We also have quite a few members who are in their late 50s, early 60s. We always preach that everyone is here to do what makes them feel comfortable. So there are people here who will train hard. There is going to be no way, shape, or form any scenario where they're going to pressure anyone else into doing that. Very quickly, everyone realizes what the vibe is in here. And the one way it's been described to me is that our gym has kind of Craig Jones vibes, where it's playful, it's fun. We don't take ourselves seriously as a general rule. However, we still do have a good subset of people who do want to get those rounds in, who do want to train hard. It's almost like we try to turn that into a playful game. So every summer we have our own little tournament here. It's like a white belt tournament, and it's only for white belts. And it's to get them more exposed to rolling in front of an audience in case they would like to compete. If you've been training, rounds in the gym and kind of a match at a tournament are 2 different things. And there's adrenaline dumps, there's stress, there's anxiety. And one little thing that we've done here is we've kind of created this tournament where there's one match going on, everyone's around them watching, they're encouraged to trash talk, boo, cheer, coach, whatever they want to do. And it's a real match with real rules, a ref, the 2 people have a match. But it's playful. At the end, nobody's like gloating that they were the winner, and no one feels bad that they were the loser. But
what if I want to rip my my gi off and point to the sky? And
that could be done. It's funny, you could do that. You'd have to read the room, right? Yeah, like, is this the time where it's the gi opening time, or maybe I've really demoralized my friend here? He doesn't need to see that. I'll save that for like another time. We always kind of try to parallel the white belt tournament, and this year we're doing like a kind of like a tag team rolling with all the colored belts. So they're encouraged to pair up, come up with a team name. They can have a costume if they want. And it's same matches. We kind of throw in some kind of fun little rules to make it kind of like you do a little 2-on-1 if you want. Stuff like that, it's still rolling, you still roll hard, but I just add a little kind of spice to it to kind of make it fun still. And everyone knows, like, I'm a pretty serious guy outside of the gym, but on the mats, I'm never taking things serious. I get it, there are gyms out there that, they're a serious gym. We are IBJJF, win the gold medals, everything is kind of like prim and proper. We're that way too, but we really focus on fun. I want you to laugh. If you're not laughing when you're in here, forgetting about all the stuff that's going on out there, whether it's at home or work or wherever, I'm not doing my job very well.
I'm going to bring up your physique, as weird as that sounds. So there's this guy, like I mentioned at the beginning, that I see, and he's the uke from Matt McPeake, who's your professor. And Matt's kind of a larger, sort of imposing fellow, very strong, kind of big guy. And then there's you, and not that you're any kind of weakling or anything, but you're an average size man, not on the larger size. I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
And, to be honest, I'm on the smaller side.
So I empathized with you, and I related to you, and I'm like, oh, cool. There's a normal guy who can do this and who can teach this and who can articulate this and who can execute this at a high level. Tell me about your journey, your experience of jiu-jitsu. What was that like?
For sure. I like how you kind of tap danced around the issue. I identify as a tiny guy. Even though I know I'm not tiny, I'm probably like a $155, and you're right, Matt is quite a bit larger. All my instructors have been quite a bit larger than me in my journey, and it's been frustrating at times. Going to class, they're demonstrating something, and in my head I'm like, that's a big guy move. And it's probably written all over my face, like I'm just like dismissing what they're showing because I'm a little bit smaller, and I'm like, that would work for a big guy, but you're asking a lot of me to accomplish that goal. And I think along the way, for maybe out of necessity, I've had to maybe look for other resources of people that are a similar body type to me. And I don't follow a lot of professional jiu-jitsu athletes on Instagram. I'm probably one of the few kind of social, like Instagram, especially savvy people that doesn't do that. And one person that I have followed right from my white and blue belt days is Gianni Grippo. And he's Marcelo Garcia black belt. Just very similar build. I really admired his dedication, his passion, and a lot of what he did, I just seemed to gravitate towards. I would, on my own, be seeking out his matches. Anytime he'd post anything online, I would be watching and studying it. And I think having that balance of a larger instructor, one of my instructors here who teaches at the club with me now, I used to train with him years ago, and he was a head instructor at his own club that's since closed. And he's 6'4", 250, 260, completely different style than me. And I think training with someone like him, training with someone like Matt, it's almost a perfect balance where they get to experience the annoying, scrawny little guy wriggling out of everything, climbing on their back and strangling them. And I get to experience the pain and suffering of being stuck under a Powerline side control for like 2 minutes, having my ribs crushed. And me now having to figure out, okay, how does a little guy get out of this? Flip it. How does a little guy apply this? And then they also have to go, okay, I've gotten really good at holding a big guy down doing these things. How do I hold down this little annoying guy who seems to have all these tricks?
So you do believe in anatomical sort of differences in jiu-jitsu? Okay. Some people, they'll just say, jiu-jitsu just should work,
So there's these sayings, right? So the one saying, you see it on shirts, is jiu-jitsu is for everyone. And I think maybe people not misinterpret that saying, but maybe they look into it a little too deeply, meaning it's for every person in terms of their personality or their... No. Sometimes I just think about it as jiu-jitsu is for every body type. It's for the unathletic, it's for the overweight, it's for the tall, the short, men, women, children. Anyone can take this art and craft it and mold it to their body and make it work for them. I think that's what that statement means to me anyways.
So we've mentioned this term Powerline a few times without giving really good context. Can you describe for the listener viewer, what is the Powerline? What are we talking about here?
So Matt defines a power line. He's kind of through training discovered that the line connecting an opposite hip to shoulder, kind of like how your seatbelt would connect over your shoulder, that kind of crisscross, being able to control someone across that line as much as possible between the shoulder and hip gives you an exceptional amount of positional control without exerting a lot of energy. And if you actually start thinking about how one might go about trying to hold someone down, it always seems to be a battle of balance between pinning their hips to the mat and pinning their head and shoulders to the mat. And if you can find a way, and Matt's pretty good at it, balancing yourself where you can kind of hit both spots without, again, exerting too much energy, it is exhausting and it is most of the time crushing. Like, there's times when I've taught it to my students. Like I said, I only weigh about 155 pounds, and my uke is dying with me crushing them. Like, you can tell how I feel when Matt's doing it to me now. Just doing these types of movements leaves your opponent more open. They end up doing really stupid things because just out of kind of a reflex. They've had enough of the pain, they want to breathe, their hands start going, their legs start moving, they'll open themselves up. Matt's a pretty big proponent of taking opportunities to submit your opponent when they give them to you. You're not out there trying to snatch things and rip them off. Your opponent will end up giving you things if you focus primarily on controlling them. He and I, our styles are similar kind of mentally. I know Chris Howder recently put out a little clip where he said that jiu-jitsu, the art, is not just the balance and pressure and leverage, but it's also, he used two words. One was cunning and one was guile. And I really like that because I think that's forgotten a lot of the times where, yeah, it's human chess with your body, but your brain, like if you can outsmart your opponent in the moment, you trick them and you pull off something because they gave it to you. There is, for me anyways, there's nothing more satisfying than that. And they know it, you both have a little laugh, and like, next time you're not gonna get me. It's like, okay. And then you both go home and try to think about how you're gonna trick them, like, next time even better.
I love it. Like, yeah, everyone always uses that chess analogy. For me, I always use a no limit hold'em poker analogy. For me, it's like the bluff. It seems like, or the all in bluff, you know what I mean? Like you said, the guile, the tricksterism, the fooling, let's see what they give you, what they fall for.
I have a lot of students who will end up telling me, you know what, you're not actually really good at this. You're just waiting for me to be bad. I'm like, pretty much, like, it's pretty much it. Like, I've been around long enough. I'm more patient. I can just wait for you to be bad more often than I'm going to be good.
So you might have answered it there, but what makes a great jiu-jitsu student?
Okay, I could say tons of things right now, but like the
Please, say
number one.
them.
Okay, but like I'll start with the number one because it's kind of an intangible. It's almost the appreciation of the beating. Like you love an aspect of getting your ass kicked. You're like, holy crap, I got my ass handed. Every time I talk to anyone who's been on this journey for a long time, you'll hear a story about so-and-so who kicked the crap out of me and I came back for more. Those are the people who, they'll come back because they want to get their ass kicked again. But they see that, okay, I obviously am missing something here. And the curiosity, which kind of, I guess, is the second thing and kind of goes along with it, will invariably lead them down that path. But if you have a little inkling of not enjoying pain and suffering just a little bit, you're never going to do this. You're going to take a few classes. You might even last a month. You're going to be in the shower and you're going to feel the aches and pains. The water's going to hit that mat burn on the top of your feet, and you're going to go, what am I doing with my life? But it's those people that are like, yeah, but that's just going to go away. Like, I see the people that have been here for 2, 3, 5, 7 years. I want to be them. And I know there's only one way. It's just keep showing up, keep asking questions, and just enjoy the suffering. Like, there's no other way. Like, I can't imagine not enjoying that feeling after a good open mat, where you're just completely exhausted. You know you're going to be sore the next day. But there's something about it. There's something so satisfying about that level of pain. It's like the most accomplished, painful feeling I think I've ever had in my entire life. And as those students, I see them, I can name them right now. They know that's inside them too. And if they don't let life get in the way, which is gonna, I know it will, but if they just continue on the path, there's no reason why they can't be me.
That's so interesting, enjoying the beating, because I see that almost as, and I've ran into these people too. It's almost like they don't need positive reinforcement. And that's something that I've always needed, early on. I notice I'm quitting all these things because I get this negative feedback immediately. And I'm thinking, whatever endeavor I might have been trying out as a kid and thinking, oh, well, maybe this isn't for me. I don't get, I lost in this thing. This isn't for me. I'll go on to the next sport or the next thing or the whatever you try. But then you see some people, they come in and like, as you mentioned, they see it as like, wow. And now I see it as, oh, they're thinking this works. This stuff works. Yeah. I need this.
Yes, exactly. Like I have one student in particular. We had a roll on Saturday and I was going pretty hard on him. He's a white belt. He's been training with me for about a year and a half. And I did not submit him. He did everything in his power to not get submitted. And you could tell it was a little bit of like a kind of a big sigh at the end of the roll. And he was like kind of defeated a little bit. I'm like, hey, I didn't even get you there. I said, remember when I used to get you in 30 seconds and then it took me a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? He's like, you just see kind of the light bulb go off. He's like, oh yeah. I said, eventually you'll be getting me. Like this is the path that you're on. And as long as they see that slow, deliberate progress, I tell people it's the only thing I've ever done in my entire life that no matter what, you will get better at if you just keep doing it. I don't care who you are, how bad you think you are at it. Trust me, if you just keep doing it, you will get better every single time. Better than yourself that you were yesterday. I promise you.
It seems like those individuals that you mentioned or you described as enjoying the beating, that they would make your job easier. Like you just identify as a coach, like, okay, they're going to stick with this easy. So conversely, then it would seem like you would need a high level, which it seems like you have, of emotional intelligence to identify those that don't enjoy the beating, right? That need that encouragement.
So you mentioned negative feedback, which is kind of interesting because I will try to get to know my students on a personal level to know which ones I can't even give negative verbal feedback to. So I have students that I can tell them that they suck. Like I will tell them, like that was a terrible attempt at that. I can't believe you did that. Oh my God, that sucked. I can do that. And it will motivate them. Someone like me, I'm a big fan of the Michael Jordan, the Last Dance documentary. His dad would say, like, if you ever told Michael he couldn't do something, that was all the motivation he needed. I'm the same way. Don't ever tell me I can't do something. Out of spite, I will just do it. But I do have those students that I know if I ever even hinted at a negative feeling or thought, it would completely deflate them. So, yeah, it's odd. I can't describe it to you. It simply takes place in the initial conversation I have with them. I will make it a point to chat with all brand new students, whether they're a trial member, they've signed up. I will sit down with them, every single one of them, at the end of their first few classes, and we'll just have a chat over by the window while they watch everyone roll. And those first few rounds where they're watching, we're talking, I'm getting to know them. They're building up the courage for me to throw them into the wolves and have them now join and do some rolls. But it's those moments where I kind of get a sense of okay, this is going to be a person where I'm going to be careful with. I'm not going to be able to be as harsh as I usually am with some of my more experienced guys and girls. Or I'll meet them, I'm like, okay, this person, they have the bug already. I'm going to see if I can't poke them a little bit every now and then to see how far I can push them.
Can you give me an example of what does that conversation look like at the window with that new individual?
So I get a sense of not why they're in my gym, just on an emotional level, what motivated them to walk through that door. It's scary. I think it's one of the scariest things you can do is they have no experience. I'm going to walk into a martial arts club and maybe I walk in and people are already rolling. I'm going to look at that. That is super intimidating. So I often don't talk a lot of the time when I'm chatting with them. I'll ask them a good initial question that gets them going and gives me an insight as to why they're doing this. What is it that they hope to get out of just being at my club? And it kind of goes from there. I do get into a little bit of their personal life. We're a big kind of university town. We have a couple colleges here. Do they live nearby? What do they do for a living? Are they a student? The first question I usually ask is, have they done anything even remotely like this before? And most often the answer is no. And it's just from those first few initial questions and the look in their eyes. And I'm not going to brag about this, but I can usually look into a new person's eyes and tell you whether they're going to come back. There's usually a deer in the headlights look. And I'm like, this could go either way. And then there's usually they've tuned out. They've decided right away, this is weird. I don't want to do this. And I'll talk to them and they're not listening. The answers they're giving me back are not thoughtful answers. Their mind is already back out the door. They're already gone mentally. They're just waiting for me to shut up so they can get up and leave. And then there's the people who are wanting me to shut up so that I can go out and roll. So I can tell that too. I can tell that like energy where they're like, just shut up, okay? Yeah, I got it. Can I go roll now?
So we covered a lot of it, but I'm curious, so what makes a great instructor?
You kind of hit the nail on the head there. Emotional intelligence. We're all people. It's the one reason why I've kept going back to Globetrotters camps is for the people. It's not for the amazing new armbar I'm going to learn or the new sweep I've never seen before. It's all of the laughing and storytelling and ribbing and everything. It's connecting with people on a human level, realizing that there's this passion that you have inside you that you can identify in someone else. And I used to make a joke, and it was a joke when I was a white belt, that the instructors didn't know who we were. They didn't know our names. We were kind of anonymous. And when I was a colored belt, right up into like purple belt, we'll even say brown belt, I did not know your name if you were a white belt. And I wouldn't commit it to memory because in my mind, like, what's the point? You're just going to quit within the first 6 months anyways. But one thing I've done as an instructor is I have over 100 and something students, 120 students. I know everyone's name. I know something about them. I can tell you their strengths and weaknesses on the mat. And I can tell you something about them outside of the gym as the reason being why they're here. And it's just connecting with them on a human level. I have one of my instructors who his classes were some of the least attended. And I would ask him, okay, well, who was there last night? And he wouldn't be able to name anybody. I'm like, that's the problem, buddy. You need to be able to just know their name. If someone comes through the door and you go, hey, Kent, good to see you again. How's the wife? Like, I don't know what his wife's name is. I don't know what his girlfriend's name is. Like, it's something though, right? And it shows them that like, okay, he's remembered my name. I wonder what else he's remembered about me. It seems like he really cares. And it's not faking. I'm not faking this. It's not like an act. I'm not pretending. I've just learned that the best way you can get the most out of someone is to connect with them on a human level. I can show you the fanciest little sweep in the world, but if they don't care about me and I don't care about them, that communication line that I've kind of created between us is so weak, it's not going to matter. But if we're now friends and we have that bond and they can trust me, I'm demonstrating that something's going to work on them for their body type in a situation where they're under stress and they can't breathe, that the guy's way bigger, they're going to trust me more, just from a human level. Like, I don't know. I never thought I would say that on my journey up until I was up into like a brown and black belt level. It was all about me. And ever since I went to Globetrotters, I've met some amazing people. It's really shown me it's more about what you give to everyone else than what you take.
I'm curious how you're developing leaders and teachers. You mentioned this individual who didn't know the names and something like that. So are you looking at the purple, brown belts and thinking now that you're a black belt, you know what I mean? How am I going to develop these people into quote unquote proper black belts, or those individuals that are interested in perhaps opening their own academy someday?
I am. It's only been in the last 3 or 4 months that I've really turned my mind towards that. March of this year was the first time I was allowed, like I kind of allowed myself to tie a colored belt around anyone's waist. So I was I know there's gyms around that allow that. A colored belt can promote someone to like blue belt, let's say. I always looked at everything, including how I teach, how I lead, is if that were me, if I were the white belt, would I want purple belt giving me my blue belt? Or would I want a black belt giving me my blue belt? I said it would be more meaningful and impactful if a black belt were the one that was going to give that to me. So now that I've started promoting people, it started in March of this year, now my mind's been turning towards, okay, that's great. I can trust them to be able to assist with a class, help out with a student who's having a problem. But let's take it a step further. How can I kind of create and cultivate an environment where those people can grow on their own? So what I've done is I've kind of started throwing them to the wolves and kind of throwing them off a cliff every now and then, where we'll be away from the gym without like notice, and they'll be expected to lead class on their own. And it gives them the power to not freak out with me watching them. They're not being judged, and they have the support of everyone in the gym. So all of the people know, oh crap, Aaron's not here. Logan's not been given any time to prep for this class. We know he's been put on the spot. We're going to be supportive. And just having that kind of culture, allows that person to take a deep breath, look within themselves, go, okay, what am I really good at? What are my strengths? And it just kind of comes out. There's nothing worse than being in an environment where you're being evaluated. I'm there with like a clipboard telling you how good you are at communicating the little details or whatever. No, I'm not even there. I will never know. I was never there. I have a group chat on Instagram. I'll know after the class. You'll see it. Like, oh, Cam taught a great class tonight. That was awesome, man. Thank you so much. And he's like, oh, thank you guys. I don't know what he taught. I don't know how the class ran. I don't know what happened. All I know is that people left that room with a smile on their face and they were happy. He's now empowered so that when I do schedule him to be, or her to be the teacher, they have that experience to fall back on. And they have the support of the room to kind of motivate them and guide them.
Your bio mentions your experience in law enforcement and the unique perspective it's provided you on self-defense and conflict resolution. I'm curious, how has your background in law enforcement influenced your approach to teaching self-defense techniques and jiu-jitsu?
I think it's more realistic in probably a less sensationalized way. Often when you get marketed a kind of a self-defense, or whether it's like a program or a class or an aspect of like a martial arts gym, there's often like a sensationalized scenario that you're put in, like a life and death, or you're in a dark alley and you're being attacked. Quite often, any kind of scenario where you can diffuse it by eye contact, having your chin up, and being confident, that scenario is never going to happen. And I know that you can diffuse the vast majority of any potential physical altercation with somebody who's probably not in their right mind. They might be emotionally distressed. Could be done either with body language or your words. That's what I try to convey to people. If you remain calm, if you can kind of make light of a situation, heck, ask someone their name. That would often diffuse the situation because you're much less likely to punch someone in the face if you know their name. But then I take it a step further. In training with officers who have the experience of being in those situations where things didn't go so right and they had to defend themselves, they've used their actual life experience. I've trained with a number of officers who have discounted certain things and gravitated towards other things that they viewed as being more important. Distance control, remaining on top, never accepting being on your back ever, always getting up, and creating space between yourself and your attacker. Those are often in contrast to some of the things you end up seeing online with allowing someone to wrap their arms around you and allowing them to hold you and allowing them to take you down. There's very simple things you could do to just never allow those things to happen, and it starts maybe with just how you carry yourself and how you communicate with someone else. Fortunately, unfortunately, it ends up being a byproduct of individual officers and groups of people within each police service that have the experience. London Police here, the local police service, is fortunate enough to have a black belt who's an officer, and he leads classes voluntarily on his own time to officers in the gym basement. And he provides them not only with grappling knowledge, striking knowledge. He's actually a UFC veteran, Chad Laprice. He now works for London Police as a constable. He's volunteered his time to help train people. And I see that in a lot of other agencies where they'll have one or two people that through their own kind of personal passion and experience, they've developed their own skills and they've been allowed to share that with their colleagues. Unfortunately, it's not more organized. I wish it was. There's no standard set. Every agency in the province does have to ascribe to a provincial standard. However, that isn't structured in any kind of way that would be acceptable across the board, given the size of different police services, their abilities in terms of time. Some people are granted more time outside of work to do these things than others, and it usually all boils down to budget and time.
Let's talk about the belt journey a little bit here in terms of, your perspective now that you are the black belt and the people, as you just mentioned, that will be awarding belts and such. What are your expectations in terms of each sort of belt level?
Wow. I think I knew more about that while I was in each belt level. And now I look at it more conceptually, what I feel from somebody. So I know when you're starting your journey out and you're getting ready to get your blue belt, I fully expect that you have the capability to be able to handle anybody who's walking in off the street. I don't care how big they are. I don't care how strong they are. You as a blue belt should be able to at least defend yourself, not get hurt, and they don't get hurt. So I often will pair up a blue belt with any of our trial members. I don't care how big they are or how strong they are or how aggressive they are. I trust that any one of my blue belts will be able to demonstrate the techniques and concepts we've learned in class and do so in a way that doesn't put themselves in danger or the trial member. So of course, within that, I'm looking for very specific things. I'm looking for that student to be able to ground their opponent in at least 3 or 4 ways. I'm looking for that person to be able to control their opponent in each one of the positions, back, mount, side. And I'm looking for at least 2 to 3 ways that a person could be submitted in those positions, in addition to that blue belt being able to defend and escape those same types of submissions. Defense and escape is what our gym is known for, hence the turtle. We have people coming to our open mat on Saturdays. It's free for anyone in the city to come. And that's the one thing that they say about our blue belts and our white belts that are coming up is that they're impossible to submit and they're always getting out of things, they're always defending themselves. I can't keep them down. Now, when you're looking at getting up into the higher ranks, I am definitely looking for someone who can communicate better. You're not just there for yourself. You're also there to now help everyone else. You're there to be able to lead class. If I'm teaching, I'm expecting them to be able to go around the room and help someone that they've on their own seen that's struggling. And when I'm not around, I'm expecting my purple and brown belts to be able to lead the occasional class. We have a curriculum here, and it's very straightforward, and we've been running it for almost 2 full years now, so nobody should have a question of what that is. So I fully expect my purple belts to be able to do that. I don't look at tournament and competition success as something that I look for, but it definitely helps. If you're a blue belt and you're going out there, we have a white belt who recently was promoted to blue belt, and at every tournament she would absolutely wreck everybody. She would either submit them within a few minutes or she would just dominate them in points, and I'd have the other coaches glaring at me like, can you give this girl a blue belt already? It's like, I'll give her a blue belt when I want to give her a blue belt. But I ended up giving her one because it became embarrassing that she obviously her skill sets were far well and above any other white belt in the area. So I had no other choice. And she's now competed at blue belt. She fits right in there too. I have no qualms about her at that rank. As you go up, it would be the same thing. I have colored belts in my gym who are leading classes, who are helping out. They're keeping this place clean. They're dealing with people who come through the door and have questions. They're contributing to the positive, fun environment that I have. If they're also going out and like kicking butt, that's a fast track to your next rank. I don't generally have a timeline. I did when I was kind of coming up. I had an idea of what I felt like was an acceptable time frame at each belt rank, and it turns out that that doesn't make any sense because measuring someone's time in terms of like 1 or 2 years or 3 years at each belt rank doesn't take into account the level of purposeful training you've done, how intensely and how concentrated that is. If I'm coming out twice a day, 5 days a week for 2 years, that's different than the weekend warrior that comes out for 2 years.
I like the intangibles too that you mentioned.
Yeah, I have some upper belts. They're shy. Like they're not the most outwardly vocal. They're not the one that you would see like leading a room, having 24 sets of eyes on them. I still somewhat expect them to kind of come out of their shell a little bit and open up to us and don't be afraid of screwing up. I famously had a purple belt here. I gave him the opportunity to teach a class, and it was on his favorite concept, the lockdown. And in the initial stages of his lesson, he didn't know how to do it. He was so nervous and anxious, he forgot how to even just apply the leg weave to kind of lock me down. And I'm like, we still joke to about this date about it, but I very gingerly just rolled him on top of me. I locked him down. I'm like, okay. And we rolled back, I kind of got him going. And sometimes that's all it takes is just to kind of, hey, remember, we're all friends here. No one's here to make fun of anybody. No one's here to make themselves feel better than how you feel. I tell that to every beginner during our initial chat, that nobody goes home tonight and says, I tapped out the new guy 10 times. Like, nobody says that. Nobody cares. Nobody counts taps. Nobody is keeping track of who they tap or how many times. It's all a very supportive, welcoming environment.
So you mentioned the student who taught the lockdown, like his first time teaching, or whatever it may be, the early times of teaching. What did it look like for you? Do you remember the first time that you taught? Describe what do you think looked like from the external perspective, your internal perspective?
So internally, I can tell you, I showed up it was a normal class, and my instructor before class, he literally just pointed at three of us, you, and you. You're each going to show us your favorite sweep. Go. And we had no time to prep, and we just all looked at each other like, what? We were all blue belts. And again, I think everyone in the room was like, oh, everyone has that moment where like, what if that was me? They immediately start empathizing and going, okay, Aaron's been put on the spot here. Let's not do those things that are going to make it worse. We're not going to laugh if Aaron screws up. We're not going to start talking to our buddy while he's teaching. We're all going to be supportive. If there's one thing I've learned from traveling down this crazy road, is that this martial art seems to only attract and maintain the most amazingly good people. I don't know what it is. They're just most friendly, the most understanding, empathetic, trusting people where you can be yourself in front of them and you're not afraid. So it was my turn to do my sweep, and I did it and walked around, and I thought I'd done a terrible job. Inside, I go home at night thinking, that was the worst class ever. And all it took was one person to thank me. That was so great. I'm like, it just kind of again, just pushes you. And you're like, okay, I had one person tell me that. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to be defeated, because there's no bigger enemy for my own confidence than me. I'm always kind of hard on myself. So having that one person come up to me after class and telling me how great it was positive. So I needed that. I needed that. If someone had told me in that moment, that was the worst class ever, that might have been it. That might have been it for me. Even though if someone were to tell me before that, you're never going to teach a class, that might have been the thing that would push me to try to teach a class. If that initial class had been a disaster and everyone had told me how much it was terrible, that might have killed it.
Yeah, see, you're not an enjoy the beating kind of guy when it comes to teaching then.
No. I'm not. I often need that, and I do appreciate my students will often thank me and tell me what they liked about my lessons. That does help me. It does keep me going. I often struggle with my confidence when it comes to communicating things to people in a large room with a bunch of eyes.
Can you tell me a time that you considered quitting and why?
COVID was an interesting time. We can rewind about 6 months prior to. I was in my latter purple belt days, and I was in the full-on tournament mode. I just wanted to go to tournaments. I wanted to win matches. I wanted to submit people. And the only motivation was I wanted to prove to myself that I was actually, in fact, good. I had this weird fear that I was only good against the people in my gym. I learned everyone's tricks, and I was simply aware of everyone's tendencies and their flaws, and I was simply exploiting them. And I just loved the idea of going to a different city. I don't know you. We're gonna go 100%, and if I can win, I don't even care what the color medal was. I'd go home that night and going, I did it. I did my jiu-jitsu. I performed, and in the midst of that, I didn't realize that my right arm had begun to atrophy, and I had a pinched nerve in my neck. I was like stenosis. I don't know what it was, but one day I looked down and I was missing kind of half my pec, and my right arm was quite small compared to my left arm. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'll just work out more. I'll just do curls or something. It'll be fine. Then COVID hit. This was 6 months later. Lockdown. You couldn't go to a gym, so we all ended up going to the store and buying weights so we could have a home gym in our basement. And I was with the girlfriend, and we went to a sports store. And she asked me if I thought a 30-pound kettlebell would be good enough for her. And I went to pick it up with my right arm, and I couldn't do it. And I can't tell you the fear that shot up through my body. I'm not quite 40 yet, and I can't even pick up 30 pounds with my arm. And I freaked out. So it was almost like a blessing. Those 12 weeks where I didn't train were a blessing. I got physiotherapy. I got medical treatment. I had stretches that I did in my basement. So for 12 weeks, all I did was let my neck rest, stretch, and recover. Chiropractor, RMT, acupuncture, you name it, I did everything. So by the time that the summer rolled around, I was at least comfortable that I had regained strength back in my arm, and the initial issue that I had in my neck had gone away. And I promised myself I wasn't going to do the stupid things I was doing that would allow that to happen again. I did a lot of posting on my head for certain things, which was stupid. And I would invert more than near 40-year-old man should probably be inverting. So I kind of promised myself I wouldn't do those things. I have broken those rules since then, but not quite as much. So it took me pretty much a whole year to regain the strength in my arm, and a year and a half, 2 years for me to look somewhat symmetrical from my left side to my right. So I almost quit. When I couldn't lift that weight and I was in that store and it's COVID and you're being told that the world's ending and it's never gonna be the same again. I'm like, that's it. Like, that's it for me. I had a pretty big depression, and it was kind of like a forced thing that I had put upon myself, and the world kind of was giving me a message like, yeah, bro, this is over. Like, you're done. And I told that little story kind of in a abbreviated format when I got my black belt, that meeting Matt was like a savior. Like, meeting someone like him who didn't care about the rules that were being imposed upon him. He knew what his own rules were, how to keep himself safe, how to keep his family safe, and how to be healthy and train and be with people who are also going to take care of themselves. Don't show up to the gym if you're sick, and don't bring anything home to your family to make them sick either. He was the perfect person to meet, and I've been by his side ever since. I've not regretted kind of joining up with him and having this experience. Like, it's been quite the ride since then. It was definitely a very low low at the beginning of COVID, and it's been nothing but like kind of like skyrocketing upwards. It feels like I'm literally strapped like a rocket, and I just keep going up. The fact I'm talking to you today is kind of one of those things that I kind of think about. It's like, okay, I can be on a podcast now. Okay, cool.
Just remember, we made you, we can break you, buddy. Well, you bring up, your body, and the fragility of all of us, that we seem to sometimes forget that things can go south. And you put a lot of wear and tear on your body, being an instructor and training every day or a lot of days in your day job. I'm curious, how are you keeping things? Are you, in terms of like your training, any physical work you're doing, your recovery? I'm very curious about your recovery. What are you doing?
So I believe in rest. I wish my students believed in it as much as I do. I'm 43 next month. I've been training for, we're in my 10th year now. And so I teach twice a week. I'm dedicated to myself. I will for sure be in my gym twice a week teaching. I don't believe that there should be one instructor teaching every night. There's got to be multiple voices in the gym. So I do the no-gi classes generally. I have a gi instructor who teaches the other 2 nights of the week. And the 2 weekend mornings are my time to train. So I tell myself, 4 days a week, you're in the gym. 3 days a week, you're doing something else. You're walking, jogging, playing basketball, hanging out with your friends. You're doing something else. You're not training. I don't know if it was 40 or 41. I can't quite pinpoint the year, but I remember coming home from open mat and feeling the way I usually do, and waking up the next day and it didn't go away. And I was like, oh, this sucks. That knee is still really sore. Like, I still can't close my hands the way I want. I didn't like that at all. And I'm like, if I want to keep doing this as long as I possibly can, I need to start incorporating time off. There's nothing wrong with taking time off. If you can structure breaks into your week, you won't need to take week or month-long breaks because your body's broken down. You can use those days off to identify parts of your body that might need extra attention or extra protection the next time you're on the mats. So if I train, I'm kind of going through it right now, where one of my knees doesn't feel so great, I will avoid doing things that put stress on that knee. I will take care of it. I'm a big proponent of doing things like massage, chiropractic, as needed, but I don't kind of rely on it. I really rely on my own stretching and my own taking of breaks.
I noticed in your schedule you have some certain listing for, and I'm talking about the Academy's schedule, on a Sunday class.
Yeah.
And it's called something like drills and...
Drill and roll.
Drill and roll. So
Yeah.
What is that? What is the unique distinction of that?
So I was encountered with a lot of students who appreciated the lessons during the week, but they wanted more time to be able to apply them in a scenario that made sense to them and seemed to be natural. Chris brought it up on your last episode, 74, where he said that Preet would show his sideways guard, and he thought it was great, but he had explained to him that not a lot of the people who were going to see that would be able to apply it in their world. Like, they're not going to find themselves in a situation where they're going to be able to apply that concept. So what I've done with Sunday classes is it's more of a thinking class where we take the concept of the week or a recent concept, and all we do is situational sparring and drilling in those positions. So if you're a beginner and you're just surviving during the rounds after class during the week, you're never able to achieve top side control. Ever. So by the time you got there, months later, you've completely forgotten about the concept that was shown for those weeks. So that Sunday is, I basically give them the first, I'm not sure what it is, it's at least the first third of the class to play around in the position, and then we dissect it with a bit of a Q&A troubleshooting, and we keep doing situational sparring and rolling to drill in those little deep, details. So for example, this week it was getting stuck in the closed guard. It's going to happen to you if you're a beginner. Someone's going to wrap their legs around your waist and it's like, how do I get out of this? And having rounds, short situational rounds where I don't help you. You're getting out of closed guard. Then after, we go around the room and we start dissecting commonalities, common problems that people always seem to run into. And then I'll do a little mini lesson. Then we go back and we do it again. And by the end of that hour, everyone should have improved and taken something away from them and feel empowered that the next time they're in class and they're in those regular roles, it has nothing to do with closed guard, but wow, I got stuck here again. At least I have something that Aaron's shown me. And I've actually practiced quite a bit on a Sunday and I'm able to apply now. It's all situational. If it's a submission-based week where we're looking at submissions, everyone will be expected to drill with their partner and apply the submission without any resistance. Then it's, okay, your partner's resisting now. Okay, now you're not even in that position yet. You got to get there. Then you got to apply it, and then they're going to defend. Like we just add levels to it. But I tell them, I think of it as like a thinking person's class.
I love that. I know when I was talking to Jonathan Thomas, he said they were doing a very similar type of thing. And I know I had the challenge early on of you learn whatever move of the day, technique of the day, whatever, and then you can't do it because everyone knows what you're working on.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would learn, technique of the day and I would wait a week. And I was
smart,
that
yeah.
jerk, who would just apply it for the next following week secretly. But so I love the idea of the Sunday.
Yeah, so these people who come on Sundays, it's the following week it'll trail in to their roles and their drilling. It seems to stick a little bit better by giving them that little added little bonus on the Sunday morning.
Your media, your content. You have a YouTube channel, which is fantastic. There's a dearth of content and information and techniques that I think all would help any Jiu-Jitero out there who wants to see it. I think it's a lot of great stuff. Can you tell me about putting out that stuff and your content in general?
For me, it was value. A lot of the gyms that you go to don't provide their students with, this sounds bad, but it's true. They don't provide them with value. They are more interested in keeping everything a secret. It's not a secret anymore, guys and girls. It's on the internet. Even their schedules, you go to some websites and you don't even know what the schedule is. It's like, hey, I know you don't want to tell me how much this is, but at least tell me what the commitment is that I'm going to be expected to do, right? But I think the schedule will lead you to the pricing, and this is they want you in there and do their whole sales job. Anyways, I always found that I wanted to provide value to my students. The students who wanted to come every week, and for whatever reason they couldn't make it a certain week, school was busy, they had to work, their wife was sick, they had to stay home. There had to be a way that they could still benefit from the curriculum. So like I said, we run a 16-week curriculum that's rotating and evolving. We keep adding things to each kind of concept and position. I wanted a way that students could still have access to it. And I figured, why not just give it to everyone too? If someone wants to seek me out and find it, great. But it's mainly for my students. And when they come in, part of the little chat I have with them is, if you forgot anything about tonight, it's on YouTube, and we're going to add to it. And giving students the ability to, on their own time, at their own pace, keep learning. And I've been empowered by other instructors who contacted me after stumbling across my channel and seeing things and telling me how they had never seen one tiny little thing that I was doing. And I'm like, that's amazing. If I can give that out too and provide that to the world, perfect. So it was honestly a little marketing gimmick that has taken on its own life. And I have a few students here who are videographers. So I might have to hire them to because it was me setting everything up. It was like a one-man show of, I'd film it on my phone, I'd bring it home, I'd edit it, I'd upload it. It would take days. I would just do it on my own. I should get someone to do it for me.
What I found really interesting too is that you guys covered everything in it. Like you even teach some rubber guard and stuff too in it. And you also talk about the Powerline in it. You show Powerline stuff. You show all kinds, traditional stuff and very interesting leg locks and all kinds of things. Is that sort of the mentality in the culture of the academy and of your teaching in general? Is like anything goes and we should learn everything? Or
there's no one style and there's nothing off limits. Everything, as long as everyone practices safely, like we said earlier, it's finding that thing that speaks to your body. So if rubber guard speaks to you, great. I'm going to have to provide you with a taste of that. And you're going to have that meal and go, I want some more. There's a dearth of information online if you want to go down that rabbit hole and do that. I have 100 total students. We have about 70 some odd adults. they each have their own unique style, and there's not a single pair that are anything alike. Everyone does their own thing, and they've gravitated to an aspect of grappling, and I love that. And I think that's what makes our gym unique, in that everyone has their own style and their own way of doing things. The only thing that's common amongst everyone is you can't submit them. And they're going to defend everything until the death.
So, Aaron, where can we get more information about you and everything you're up to?
I primarily reside on Instagram. I'm at TheBeastman, so it's TEH Beastman, and same handle on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel with content on there, and that's where you can find me. You can message me on Instagram whenever, anywhere, anytime you're in town. Our gym is very welcoming and open. Anyone is welcome to train here.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching and viewing out there. I'm your host, Adolfo Foronda. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, the nice reviews on the Spotify, the Apple Music, and everywhere else. And again, Aaron, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was really an honor. It was fun.
Thank you so much.
All right, see you guys.